We're live? Okay, great. Welcome to our media briefing. It is midweek in our second week. Today we address the Grand Staircase Escalante resolution. We have our sponsor here, so if you have any questions for Senator Okerlund. We also have our budget director, appropriations chair. The appropriations czar, as some would call him. We're also, if you have any questions for Senator Stevenson. Any questions from our media?
Can we talk about the timing of dealing with the resolution? You dealt with Bears Ears on Friday. There was some thought you'd do both together, as I guess the House did. What was the thinking about waiting until today, until Wednesday, 3 days later to deal with it?
If you'll remember, on Friday we had a pretty lengthy debate on the Bears Ears, and we also had scheduled the Executive Appropriations Committee. So if we would have had the half an hour or 40-minute debate that we did on Grand Staircase on Friday, in addition to what we already did on Friday, it would have taken us through EAC, and so that was the problem for that day. So then once we got to this week, our regular Senate days are Monday and Tuesday. We knew that Wednesday was going to be a House day and that we could address the bill, and it was soon enough to address it, to get back to our delegation, which was the idea to have them support this resolution and be able to start maybe a process where we can get it done. So it was a time we kind of did our own time, our own process on it, but it was natural. It might have made sense to do them together on Friday if we would have had the time to do it. We just didn't.
The reason I asked was there was a big push on the Bears Ears resolution to get that through both sides quickly so it could get back to the new administration. And as you know, Representative Chaffetz was able to meet with President Trump yesterday and deliver that resolution on Bears Ears, but this one wasn't done yet. So did that worry you at all that this might not get the same amount of attention because it was being dealt with separately?
Well, remember, this is a little bit different resolution. It calls on Congress to establish a process where we can go to work on this issue. The other resolution called on the President to take an action. So yes, they were both important to move quickly. We moved the bills as quickly as they came into our process, and as I said, probably if we would have had time last Friday, we could have dealt with them together. But since we didn't, 2 days later, really in our process, the first we could have done it would have been Monday. So going to Tuesday is just 2 days later, and it gets to Congress, which is where, to our congressional leaders, which is where it needs to be.
So getting that other one done first was more urgent because it's calling for immediate action.
Yeah, timing, I think so.
You've talked about how these resolutions would be a form of conversation with different stakeholders who are interested in the issue. And obviously there's concerns from both people who live around some of these monuments and then on the other side, people with the Outdoor Retailers Association. Would there be an opportunity for people like those groups to talk about these issues and be part of that conversation, or would it just be among congressmen and legislators?
If you'll remember, the PLI process that Congressman Bishop started involved stakeholders from multiple special interest groups. I think outdoor recreation is kind of a broad category, but I think they probably would have had 2 or 3 people at the table during that process. I envision something like that kind of a process where we are able to get stakeholders involved in it. I think it's going to be important to the people in that area down there who are absolutely opposed to the monument the way it is now. I think it would be important, just as important for them to protect recreation and the ability to recreate on those acreage, on that 1.9 million acres, as it is for the Outdoor Retailers Group that would be interested in recreating down there. I think we would find, as someone said in committee, we ought to be looking for where we have commonalities. And I think if we can have this discussion and get stakeholders at the table, we'll find that we have a lot more in common than we have that we need to fight about. But if we don't involve the stakeholders, if we don't involve the people that are down there, which is not taking place yet, we're going to continue to have generation after generation who will oppose and do everything they can to not normalize any kind of a situation down there like the one we have now.
You notice that we're not arguing about Zion's National Park or arches. Those were created by Congress in the President's agreement. And I support that 100%. Those are great parks. Park has the connotation of something larger, like Yellowstone Park. Monument seems to be more of a smaller. So I think the biggest problem with both those monuments is just the including of so much land that weren't antiquities. And then especially, there was some process with the Bears Ears, but not the process that I believe should be designating these lands, these big decisions where Congress is involved. But there was none with the Grand Staircase, Escalante. That was completely a tyranny act, I think, by the president, unilaterally, without engagement of the stakeholders or just a few stakeholders. And I think I mentioned this here before, but I think this is the way this has happened. My wife works on a playground. She's been the playground aide for 13 years. And she deals with arguments on the playground. And the children in those arguments will come up and they'll say, Mrs. Niederhauser, take my side. They're doing this, they're doing this. And then she'll say, no, go work it out. And then another group will come up, take our side, tell them that they're wrong, do what we want to do. And she's been resistant to do that and let them work it out, because when you let the groups work it out together, then you get more buy-in and and there's obviously a better process. But if she was to take one of those sides and now just favor that, then you leave out a group of the children on the playground and coming to probably what the right situation or the right solution. And I think that's how we feel about Bears Ears. Yeah, there was a lot of challenges there, but I think the president was only listening to one group, or maybe a couple of groups that said, hey, we've been at the table with PLI, but we're not getting everything that we want. So will you just do it for us? And that's what I see happen there. Instead of letting a process work and everybody gives and takes in that situation, and you finally get better buy-in. Then you avoid state legislatures passing resolutions because everybody's been heard, everybody had to compromise a little bit, they may not have gotten everything they want, and nobody has had the advantage, which I think it's obvious that there's been an advantage. A playground aide entered into this situation and took a side, and this is what we get as a result.
But Congress has rejected the PLI, or not rejected the PLI, they just haven't dealt with the PLI. So if you see that process as the solution, how is this resolution going to advance that?
The Grand Staircase resolution?
Right, I mean, you're talking about, you want to see a process like the PLI.
Yeah, well,
but that didn't go anywhere in Congress, so what happens?
Well, I guess we just have to, we're doing everything we can to try and reverse that, to say, hey, wait a minute, you didn't have any process here, by the way. And our resolution on the Bears Ears was saying, I think my claim is that, yeah, you listened to some people, but you didn't listen to another, and so there wasn't a balance of result.
You say they didn't listen because it wasn't reflected in the product?
Yes.
What
One of our viewers has a question about this subject.
He said, parks can only be created by Congress. Does that mean that more bipartisan effort needs to happen when it comes to Utah's emerging outdoor recreation industry?
Yes. Right, spot on. Thank you.
I think one of the issues that's out there with the national monument status, and we can take a look here in the state of Utah where national monuments have been created, and then Congress created national parks after that. The boundaries of those parks, and I'm not certain, but I think they did change because Congress changed the national monument status, which then freed up that other. So it's a beginning of a process, really, the way I look at it. And I take a look at President Obama's proclamation in Maine of a national monument there. Congressman Bishop was very, very opposed to that, though the people in the state of Maine wanted it, or the majority, from what I understand. Also, I don't hear this outcry coming from Nevada, where there was also a national monument declared. That's the Bears Ear issue. The issue we dealt with today, I believe, is a little bit different. And it's because of the majority leader's closing comments that I went aye on that. And that is the fact, I believe that there's a reason and a time for everybody to sit down and start talking about how do we alleviate this expanse. And as Majority Leader pointed out, there's a lot of consternation in southern Utah over that designation. There was at the time. I mean, there was a political upheaval in the state of Utah. We lost a congressman. And minority fortunes kind of changed a little bit with that election as well. But that being said, we look at the economic development that's came out in southern Utah over all of that. And there's been great growth of jobs and income in that area of the state. But if there's a way to alleviate the hatred and everything down in that area for another generation, then this would be an appropriate thing to do. It does not ask Congress to do away with the monument. It only asks people to sit down and discuss the boundaries of that monument. Unlike the first resolution that was to ask the president to do totally away with Bears Ear. This is not a discussion to do away with the Grand Staircase Escalante, but rather let's sit down and negotiate some of the boundaries now that we know what is beautiful and economically viable to sustain itself down there, and what can we do to alleviate the edges.
Thank you, Senator Davis. Senator Davis has joined us, our minority leader, and we appreciate you being here to have this discussion.
Can I ask, in years past, you guys have passed probably 15 to 20 resolutions urging Congress to do various things or urging the president to do various things. Do you feel like, given the change in Washington, that this has more of an impact than those might have had in the past?
I think my constituents do. I think there's some optimism right now that we may have a chance to be able to take an honest look at what we need to do down there and get the stakeholders at the table with the new Interior Department Secretary coming in, potentially a new National BLM Director who could be involved in a process, that office could be involved in a process where we sit down and we map all those acres and we draw circles around what really should be protected and what may be designated as an ACEC, area of critical environmental concern, an area that may be designated as a recreational area. With the new administration coming in and Congress in a position where it controls both houses and less likely to have something vetoed when they work on something like this, and with the change in the agency heads, I believe we have a chance. And I think that the people that I represent down in that part of the state feel optimistic that now is the time to try to make a difference on this.
You mentioned there the new BLM director and talked about one of your colleagues across the way who might be. Given his outspokenness on this issue, is he somebody who could foster a dialogue, or would he be seen as a biased arbiter?
Everybody that goes into that, I think everybody that goes into that office has their own biases. Into any office, they have their own beliefs. You're talking about Representative Noel, and Representative Noel has a long history of work in the BLM. As you know, he worked for the BLM for many years as their director and understands all of the different designations that are possible to be able to make, and all of the ones that have already been authorized by Congress, by FLPMA, Federal Land Management Policy Act, have authorized lots of different tools that we can use to be able to do the right things on these lands. So I believe that whoever the director is, the national director, will be able to have a very good and honest dialogue on this if we can get to the point where we can sit down and work on it together.
There's some language about these monuments that they should be the smallest appropriate size. I don't know it specifically, but is there some working idea about what Escalante being shrunk would be shrunk to?
I think there are people that have been thinking about that for 20 years. There are some slot canyons down there that we absolutely ought to protect. And there are some formations that we absolutely ought to protect. They are what meets the definition in the Antiquities Act as those facets of that land down there that we ought to protect with a designation. There are other chunks of land that are absolutely ideal for biking, long distance biking. There are some that's just hiking. Each of those areas should be looked at for its value and how it could be used, and the multiple use concept on BLM lands calls for that kind of a look at how things can be used and authorized. But yeah, absolutely, there are some things we need to protect. And I think people do have an idea of some of those things that we really need to make sure that we have protection on, that we don't have desecration.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, these areas are still open to hiking, and most of them, I think, are still open to biking.
Most, yeah, no, biking,
Really
not quite so many.
what we're
Yeah.
talking about here, and most of all of the cattle grazing that was there before is still there.
Except
Really,
the AUMs have been reduced by about a third, which means,
But part of that's been because of the drought.
absolutely,
Not because,
yeah.
I mean, it's management more than it is a denial of access.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
are we really
But
just
the-
talking about drilling and mining?
Pardon me?
Are we really just talking about drilling and mining that's disallowed in the monument? I guess there's the drilling that existed, that predated the monument.
Yeah, I don't know of any drilling. Mining is probably,
I guess what I'm trying to get at is what's the economic detriment of having designated the monument?
the entire 1.9 million acres.
Yeah, I mean, where are we pointing to? There's things that can't be done now that could have been done were it not.
Yeah, I think the one that hurts the folks down there the most is that area that could be mined, that Andalex coal mine down there that has the largest tract of coal, very, very mineable. 100 acres on the surface would allow us to be able to mine that 50-acre wide swath and 70-mile long swath of very high quality oil, coal. And the 500 jobs that Senator Hinkins talked about this morning, good high-paying jobs, are just the mining jobs. You add all of the additional jobs that come along with that mining opportunity, and it's huge for that economy. It would dwarf any economic growth that we have seen over the past 20 years. And a lot of that economic growth that we have seen over the past 20 years has been because of the ability for folks to get to Wauweep on that road that goes through the monument over to Lake Powell and back and forth. So they're in a good spot there for additional growth of tourism kinds of businesses, restaurants. There should be opportunities other than a visitor stop for folks that are traveling all the way from Wahwee back into St. George or Las Vegas or Southern California, wherever they're coming from. Some real opportunities there.
Do you think anybody would mine it now if they could?
Pardon me?
Do you think anybody would mine it now if they could?
You're asking me to make a judgment call. I would say it would be much more difficult now than it was 20 years ago. Market would be questionable, but that is extremely high quality coal that would be fairly easy to access and get out. So the costs of recovery of it would be less than most of the underground mining that is going on and continues to go on. So, and as you know, there is a private land down there that is being mined now for coal in Garfield, in Kane County. So,
I think if we remember, even Governor Scott Matheson on that Adilac coal area wanted to save it because of the Factory Butte area and all of that down in there.
yeah,
And it's a very beautiful area as well. And mining down there would only last for 20 years and then it's gone.
yeah,
So you have a generation down there and then you have a stripped out area that has to be reclaimed and very expensive to reclaim that land after it's been
yeah.
destroyed.
So it's hard to say.
The resolution you passed a few years ago about the state taking control of the federal lands included in that retaking, I guess, the monument. It didn't exempt the Grand Staircase monument. If the state took control of it, you think we would mine that area, allow mining in that area?
I think that would probably be part of the discussion that we have as if we get to the point where we're trying to decide what to do with those lands. Management is the key. If the state is able to manage, whoever ends up, whether the federal government owns it or the state does, if it comes back, the management is the key, and keeping public lands public is going to be important to the legislature, I believe, no matter who owns or what the designations are. The important part is for us to be involved in the management process so that we, at this level, at the state level and at the local level, can make some of those kinds of decisions, decide what's best for us. And our federal partners at this point, we would love to have that discussion and say, how can we be more involved in the management process?
There's obviously been a lot of talk about the Outdoor Retailers Organization recently with Bears Ears, just since their reaction was based on the Bears Ears monument, and this could push them further in the direction that they've been kind of threatening to go. Has the economic impact of their organization been factored into these discussions about the potential benefits of shrinking that monument?
The Outdoor Recreation, Outdoor Retailers Conference is really good for the state of Utah. We want to keep it here. We have made that very clear, and we would hope that they're involved in these discussions. Having the threat of them pulling out because we want to have a say in what happens in the lands in our state is something we would like to discuss with them, and we're very supportive of them. We're trying to increase the ability of outdoor recreationists statewide to be able to enjoy everything that we have in this state. We have so many tourists that come into the state and they enjoy what we have. We're trying to find ways to create a program where we may be able to do some more infrastructure for outdoor recreation. We're going to have to do that. It's something that, as we see more people coming here to recreate, we have to take care of them. So it's important to us, and we want them to know that. But we also think it's very important for us to be able to have a seat at the table when we're talking about 3 to 4 million acres of our land that is being locked up, and we had no say in it. Designation. That's where it really boils down to.
Any other questions?
We have a couple of questions from our viewers. One is, what opposition do you anticipate regarding the revisiting of a decision already made by Interior? Or in other words, who are the stakeholders who would be in opposition?
To this resolution?
Yes.
I think if they really understand the resolution and want to be involved in an open process to really make great decisions about what we do in our public lands, I don't see a lot of opposition out there. I think people should be on board with this. It's like I said on the floor in my closing statement, this is something that if we don't have this kind of a dialogue, we're going to continue to have this fight for the next, who knows how long. How many generations is it going to take before we finally say, okay, we're tired of fighting that monument designation? I guarantee you it will be many generations. So everybody should be on board with this. It's not a partisan issue. This is not something us against the outdoor retailers, outdoor recreation retailers. We want them at the table. We'd love to have the conversation with them so that I'm an outdoor recreationist. I love to be able to use these kinds of lands. This is my home. And I love to be able to use those lands as well. So I'm absolutely in their camp on that. So there may be some folks who dig in their heels and say, well, the president did it and we have to back the president. I think they should become part of the process. So I don't see really a lot.
Other question?
Why does Utah continue to press for a coal market that is shrinking daily?
One of the reasons why we do press for a coal market is Utah's coal is generally low sulfur. So if places are burning coal, they ought to be burning Utah coal because it will be less impactful on the economy. And there are a lot of countries, there's a lot of places still burning coal. And until we figure out what the long term is for base power in our country and in the world, coal is going to be burned. So you might as well burn Utah coal. It's low sulfur, it will have less impact on the environment.
I think your question is absolutely right. The questioner, it is a diminishing resource, not because we don't have coal.
The demand
but
is...
the demand is down. Report the other day that I heard, India believes that they're going to be the #1 coal producer, and that means the delivery of coal into the Asian area and into Europe is going to be far cheaper coming from India than it is from the United States, and that's what's going to catapult them into the driver's seat on that. I think as we take a look at where we sell a lot of the power that we generate, the demands are now coming to alternative sources than coal and natural gas to do that, and more natural wind and solar power to provide that. And the power lines that are being built and everything else are being built with DC capacity, which allows these alternatives to be able to maintain their capacity. It's the future.
We'll take one more question. Anything? Maybe a different subject?
On the University of Utah Athletic Department audit, Jim DeBackus has just indicated that taxpayers' cost was $203,000. He had requested that the legislative auditor give him that price tag. Do you think, given that price tag, it was still worth it?
Yes.
And why?
Because we discovered some policies that the university was with their fixed assets, with their equipment, that's not right, and we think that the potential loss of taxpayer dollars and student tuition is much greater than the $230,000 if you don't have good accounting controls over your assets. So, and this now goes to, we want to discover whether other universities have the same policy. I know that the state doesn't have that policy. We have a firmer control over where those assets are, and so they don't end up missing. There's just a lot of potential for that. And when we're talking about millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer investment in kind of a small equipment that'd be more like computers and copiers and those type of things. So I'm a CPA by profession, audited organizations. I know that good accounting controls over your assets is paramount. And we discovered that there was something lacking there. And there was some other issues that came out in the audit, but that was the one that was most significant to me. And those things can be corrected now, and hopefully our taxpayer dollars and our investments there are safer when those policies change.
I think one thing to look at also in that report was the University of Utah agreed with an awful lot of the issues that needed to be addressed, and they agreed that they needed to be addressed, and they will address them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Spoken like an accountant.